Blackhawks drop a heartbreaker in Winnipeg. I'll go over my key takeaways as well as a preview of tonight's matchup with the Oilers.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just a reminder to please go and hit that like button, comment down below, and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. I'm currently on the climb to 2,000 subscribers and really would love to achieve that goal sooner rather than later, but I need all of your help. It won't cost you anything, 100% free, and really does help me out tremendously. Got to let you all know as well that today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. If you're not already a member, go and create an account, and when you put $5 down, you'll get awarded $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Bit of a heartbreaker for our Blackhawks last night in Winnipeg, as it looked like they were on their way to playing spoiler in the Jets season opener. Looked like they were on their way to picking up their first win of the season, and Arvid Soderblom looked like he was on his way to pitching his first NHL shutout. But just like that, it was gone, Blackhawks fans. Unable to button down the hatches and hold on to that 1-0 lead in the final minute of regulation. Mark Scheifele nets the game-tying goal with the extra attacker out, and then it just seemed like the Blackhawks kind of lost some momentum there, because in the 3-on-3 overtime, I don't know what they were doing. First off, Teuvo Teravainen, as a veteran leader of this team, to put that harmless shot on net on Connor Hellebuyck after the Blackhawks win the overtime faceoff, right? Like, you want to maintain possession. It's very crucial to get the puck first in overtime. Teravainen puts a harmless wrist shot on net against one of the best goaltenders in the entire world that loses the Blackhawks possession. The Jets come down the other way, and then Philip Kurashev gets absolutely burned in man coverage, leaves Mark Scheifele wide open, all alone in front. Scheifele not only nets the game-tying goal, but nets the game-winning goal as well in just over a minute stretch. And the Blackhawks, strong effort, much better performance than what we saw in their season opener on Tuesday, was all for naught. Yeah, they pick up their first point of the season, but they deserved a lot better than that. And now they're staring that tough 0-3 start in the face, even though they did pick up a point in this game. Still going into Edmonton tonight, looking for that first win of the season. An unideal situation for the Blackhawks, which is why it's so disappointing that they weren't able to come away with this game last night against the Jets, or have a better performance in the season opener against the Utah Hockey Club, because those were opportunities for them to just get that first win out of the way, and they weren't able to do it. As far as my key takeaway from last night's game here, Blackhawks fans, to kind of open things up in segment one, I'm a little bit torn, because as Seth Jones put it in his post-game interview, moral victories, they're not really a thing here in Chicago anymore. It's time for this team to get better, and it's frustrating that they didn't come away with the win last night with the effort they had, especially from the performance they got from Arvid Soderblom and net. More on him here in just a second. But quite honestly, Blackhawks fans, my main takeaway from last night's game is look what this Blackhawks team can achieve when they play together. Again, I know they didn't get the win, and that's what matters nowadays. There aren't moral victories. But I do think from what we learned from this team last night, if they play like that more often than not, we are going to be a more competitive team than we've seen the last couple of years, especially with the way that the Blackhawks supported their goaltender last night. I thought it was such a strong team effort, and the way they played together. Heck, even Seth Jones added to in his post-game interview. That was probably the most put together this Blackhawks team has looked in his 4 years since he's been here, right? It looked like an actual hockey team. It looked like there were guys supporting one another. Defensively, it was a really solid game from the Blackhawks. The 5-on-5 numbers still wound up, all being in Winnipeg's favor. But if you go and look at them through the opening two periods, they were pretty close. And I think the Blackhawks had the advantage in the deserve to win-o-meter if you went and looked that up online. After 40 minutes, they held a 1-0 lead, a nice goal from Ryan Donato, baby, who continues to look sharp, carrying over that momentum he generated from the preseason. The Jets, had some desperation late, and that's why they wound up having the edge in all of these stats. 27-22 in shots on goal, 26-20 in scoring chances. But like I said, this was a very even game, and these numbers were more even, or even some of them, in the Blackhawks' advantage until we kind of got that desperation out of the Winnipeg Jets late in the third period. And I think a big reason why the Blackhawks were able to keep Winnipeg off the board for 59 minutes and wound up only allowing 2 goals in this game is because they got a much better performance from their top 4 defensemen. And when you get good performances from veteran guys like Seth Jones, Alec Martinez, TJ Brody, a young Alex Vlasic, who's going to become more and more crucial to the success of this team. When you get good performances from those guys on the back end, Blackhawks are going to be in more games this year. They just have a much more reliable blue line than we've seen in a lot of years. Martinez and Jones kind of like the 5-on-5 analytics. They aren't the prettiest after the third period, but through 40 minutes, they were rather solid. And they still both wound up being among the Blackhawks' top 6 in terms of the game score that was posted following this contest. Vlasic and Brody were much better together than they were in the opener as well. Luke Richardson was able to keep these pairings together, unlike the opener in Utah. Vlasic and Brody wound up being 2 of the top 3 game scores for the Blackhawks in this one. They were on the ice for 7 scoring chances, 4 to only 2 against. Also out there for Ryan Donato's goal, and both of them had an expected goals for percentage above 60% at even strength. So really solid stuff out of the top 4 defensive unit for the Blackhawks. Arvid Soderblom, though, is the one who really deserves the biggest hat tip in all of the Flowers, because I believe he stopped the first 33 shots that he faced last night, got a little bit of help from the goalpost, and all of his saves weren't the prettiest, but he made himself big, and he made some big-time stops when the Jets were really surging hard late in that third period, and was the reason this Blackhawks team was able to stay ahead 1-0 through 59 minutes. Arvid Soderblom, probably his best performance at the NHL level. Definitely deserved better than an overtime loss. That's why this is, frustrating that it was all for naught, because Soderblom performed so well in a situation where, look, he knows he's not going to be the backup here in Chicago, regardless of what happened in this game. Laurent Brossoit is still going to be the number 2, and Arvid is still going down to Rockford. But for him to kind of brush all of that to the side, the noise surrounding him from a woeful last year, to go and put together that start in a building where he struggled in the past, I was very, very impressed. And hopefully this gives him some confidence going back down to Rockford, where it's a real make or break type of year for Arvid Soderblom, not only to determine what he's going to be here in Chicago, but also just the rest of his NHL trajectory moving forward. But when Soderblom, like I said, it wasn't the prettiest performance out of him in net. When he did give up big rebounds, I thought it was really, really notable that the Blackhawks seemed to be there every time. They were supporting one another. Again, they just looked like one unit back there, everyone helping out one another. Everyone has each other's backs. Good on the defense and the forwards to support one another and kind of help get those dangerous loose pucks out of harm's way. The back check, I thought, too, was really solid out of the Blackhawks. And that's what they're capable of defensively. There are a lot of good defensive players on this Blackhawks team, especially the veterans that they brought in this offseason, right? Like Teuvo Teravainen, a sneaky good defender. Tyler Bertuzzi can be a little bit physical. Alec Martinez, TJ Brody, right? We have Jason Dickinson, Nick Foligno, Ilya Mikheyev brought in as a good defensive-minded forward. Joey Anderson, Pat Maroon can be physical. Ryan Donato can play on the penalty kill from time to time. So the Blackhawks should be a much better defensive team than we've seen in the last couple of years. And I thought we got a pretty decent glimpse of that last night, even though they didn't come away with the win. Hopefully, this gives the defense some momentum moving forward, a much better showing as one unit together compared to their season opener in Utah, but still staring a potential 0-3 start in the face, Blackhawks fans. Going to take a quick break, but when I return, I'll get into my preview of tonight's matchup with the Edmonton Oilers and talk about why I believe Lukas Reichel has to make his season debut here this evening. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Indeed. We're all driven by a search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need to hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I personally love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so simple and so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask you unnecessary information and still doesn't wind up leading you anywhere. Instead, go and join the more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to hire great talent in an instant. And viewers and listeners of this show, you will get a $75 sponsored job credit that'll help get your jobs more visibility when you check out Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, a $75 sponsored job credit that you'll get for free when you go and visit Indeed.com/lockedon. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone who made Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your weekend. Now for your second listen before college football gets underway here this afternoon, be sure to go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the action never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. And you can easily find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description of this YouTube video, or simply search on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, before I get into a quick preview of tonight's matchup with the Edmonton Oilers, another toughie on the road for the Blackhawks, I do want to take a look back at my 3 keys to victory that I dropped before the matchup with the Winnipeg Jets. This is something that I'm going to be doing on every episode following a Blackhawks game. Make sure to let me know in the comment section if you like me kind of going through my 3 keys and talking about whether the Blackhawks achieved them. My number 1 key, as I alluded to off the top a little bit, was for the Blackhawks to play a full 60-minute game. And unfortunately, they played a 59-minute game. Now, it was better. They didn't take the whole first period off like we saw on Tuesday, but I said it was going to take a full 60 for them to win in Winnipeg, and they just didn't put together a full 60. They came real close. It was a step in the right direction, but it still wasn't a full 60. My second key for the Blackhawks was to produce on the power play, and I know they only got, I believe, 1 look on the man advantage in this game. Not a lot of penalty calls for either team, but I believe it was an opportunity when they were ahead 1-0 to go and add on to their lead, to go and get that insurance goal. And there were even a couple opportunities in the third period. Philip Kurashev, Andreas Athanasiou had a couple opportunities for the Blackhawks to go up by a pair, and they weren't able to do so. Getting that extra goal on the power play would have wound up making the difference in this one. My third key to victory was to not give Winnipeg any freebies. And I said if the Blackhawks did that, I believe they'd find themselves in a good spot to win, in a spot to put together a much better performance than they did against the Utah Hockey Club, and that's what happened. They didn't give any freebies until the overtime winner, Philip Kurashev and Teuvo Teravainen, kind of had hand Mark Scheifele a little bit of a freebie there. But again, a much better effort in this category. No freebies, no terrible turnovers, no awful giveaways, no odd man rushes or anything like that. The Blackhawks made Winnipeg earn what they got last night, and when that's the case, more often than not, the Blackhawks are going to be playing a lot more competitive hockey games. So there are my 3 keys that I dropped for the Blackhawks against Winnipeg. They achieved those. They wouldn't have came away with the win. Getting into tonight's matchup with the Edmonton Oilers, though, Blackhawks fans, back end of the back-to-back for the Hawks. Sure, they're going to be a little deflated after not coming away with 2 points in that game against the Jets, but no opportunity, no place to cower. They're in it now, Blackhawks fans, so going to have to put their best foot together here tonight to have any chance of coming away with 2 against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the Oilers. As far as what I would like to see out of the Blackhawks lineup, I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see any changes, just because it was a good showing last night. But I still think we got to get Connor Bedard going more. And we have the talent to get Connor Bedard going more. More talent than, how can I put this? We're too talented to be running back Nick Foligno on the top line once again. I talked about how I didn't like that in the preview episode yesterday. And it wasn't really against Nick Foligno. Like, whenever he gets that opportunity, he shows up. He usually plays well there. But Nick Foligno just isn't a top liner. He's not. And he's not the type of skill we want playing along with Connor Bedard. That's what we brought in Tyler Bertuzzi for, was to be basically the exact same, role as Nick Foligno, someone who can drive the net, play a little greasy, can mix it up and throw some hits out there. It's just, we can't have Nick Foligno out there anymore, Blackhawks fans. On the top line, if it's not a spot where we're going to succeed, we have more help for Connor Bedard. It's time to get past this. So I would love to see Lukas Reichel make his season debut tonight on the top line with Connor Bedard and Teuvo Teravainen. And I feel it's pretty far-fetched. Luke Richardson seemingly isn't too happy with him, and this healthy scratching in back-to-back games, I don't get it. Once again, we're going to bring Lukas Reichel back. I know he has to earn it, but you want to get him in one of the first 2 games, right? Are we really going to scratch him the opening 3 games of the year? And if you do have him in the lineup, you want him in a top 6 role for him to succeed. I know he hasn't necessarily shown that he should be on the top line with Bedard and Teravainen, but that's where he needs to be to have success. And we can't have Nick Foligno there any longer. He's just not a top line player. Doesn't have the skill to play with Connor Bedard, all right? We need more there on the top line, whether it's Taylor Hall or Tyler Bertuzzi or Philip Kurashev or heck, even Andreas Athanasiou. It can't be Nick Foligno. Like, we're past that time. That's what one of the worst teams in the NHL does. And I know the Blackhawks are still probably going to be at the bottom, but we have the capabilities to take a step in the right direction. I don't think we're going to achieve that with Nick Foligno on the top line. So I'd really like to see Lukas Reichel there with Bedard or Teuvo Teravainen. Or if you're not going to play Lukas Reichel, then put Andreas Athanasiou up there. I know he was fine on the 4th line with Donato and Maroon. That trio looked pretty sharp, but that's still not a spot for Andreas Athanasiou, and the top line still isn't a spot for Nick Foligno. This should be a thing of the past, Luke Richardson. Lukas Reichel, Andreas Athanasiou, or someone with more skill has to be on that top line with Connor Bedard and Teuvo Teravainen here tonight. I would like to see Lukas Reichel, Taylor Hall, Philip Kurashev, Tyler Bertuzzi. If none of those 3 get bumped up to the top line, I would expect them to remain as the Blackhawks' second trio. Kurashev had some good opportunities again to get his first goal of the season. Bertuzzi hasn't been too active through the opening 2 games. I think Kurashev's probably been the best of this line. Third line for the Blackhawks, Foligno, Dickinson, and we can have Mikheyev. That's still a very sound defensive trio. And then I'd go with Maroon, Donato, and Andreas Athanasiou. If you're not going to have him on the top line, have him in the lineup because his speed is important. This is a fast team we're playing against in the Edmonton Oilers. We need speed to match theirs. Andreas Athanasiou can provide that on a 4th line that doesn't really have a lot of speed outside of him. Even though that's not an ideal spot for him, I would rather have him there than not in the lineup whatsoever. Joey Anderson, Craig Smith would be the 2 extras to me. And that's what you bring Joey Anderson back for. He's a good defensive forward when you have him in the lineup, but he doesn't need to be in there on an every night basis. And we need more skill against this Edmonton team tonight. So I would really like to see Lukas Reichel get in there. Andreas Athanasiou remain. We'll see, though, what Luke Richardson winds up going with up front. On the defensive side of things, I think we're going to see the same top 4. Alec Martinez, Seth Jones, Alex Vlasic, TJ Brody, after being much better with one another last night. The third defensive pairing, Wyatt Kaiser, by the way, did surprisingly make his season debut. I kind of expected that the Blackhawks were going to ramp him up a little bit more, considering he didn't get to play in the preseason, but Luke Richardson threw him in there, which personally, I don't know why we took out Nolan Allen. I thought he had a good NHL debut. And you probably don't want either Kaiser or Allen serving as the 7th defenseman, which is, again, why I'm confused why Isaac Phillips is in Rockford here, but I would expect Wyatt Kaiser and Connor Murphy to get the go once again for the Blackhawks on the third defensive pairing, with Allen being the healthy scratch. I don't really understand that, but what choice really do they have with the 7D? I mean, they could sit TJ Brody, but he was much better last night. Connor Murphy's been okay through 2 games, so these are probably the 6 that Luke Richardson is going to work with on the back end. And then that leads to Peter Mrazek getting his second start of the year in net. Hopefully he can kind of ride the high vibes that Arvid Soderblom left in between the pipes last night. Blackhawks are going to need Peter to be really strong here tonight to have any chance at 2 points against Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and this strong offensive Oilers bunch. I don't have any best bets out yet, as the player props, at least on FanDuel, haven't dropped as of, 7:45 when I'm recording this here on Saturday morning. I will post something on X, though, whenever I kind of put some pieces together. So make sure to go and follow at Talkin' Hockey on X so you don't miss out on any of my bets. But there is everything that you need to know before the Blackhawks take on the Edmonton Oilers here tonight in the back end of their back-to-back. Coming up in just a moment, one final break to take. But when I return, I'll share my thoughts on the disaster with CHSN continuing. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. And to all my NFL fans out there, you can now start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And to all of my Blackhawks fans out there, FanDuel has now dropped the over-under lines for every NHL team for the regular season. You can also bet on any trophy winner for this year. Connor Bedard to win the Rocket Richard, Connor Bedard to win the Hart. I'm sure there's some sickos out there that want to put those wagers down. Make sure to go and check out FanDuel if you haven't already, because if you're not already a member, when you put $5 down, FanDuel will award you with $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed, and you can use these bonus bets to bet on anything. So make sure to take advantage of this great offer. If you're not already signed up, go and visit FanDuel.com, and when you create an account and put $5 down, you'll get blessed with $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Segment 3, Blackhawks fans, I cannot believe that we have reached this point. Last night was officially the debut for CHSN as the new Blackhawks home. They have covered a couple of preseason games, but this was the first regular season game that they were going to cover, but only the people who had DirecTV were able to watch it because CHSN did not get a deal done with Comcast before the 7 p.m. puck drop last night. And honestly, Blackhawks fans, that astonished me. I've had many people reach out to me over the last couple of weeks, whether it's some of my buddies, people in the comment section, on the internet, whatever it may be. Lots of people asking me what the heck is going on with CHSN and the Blackhawks broadcast, because people are ticked off that this situation doesn't have a resolution. And I told all of them, if you have Xfinity, shame on me, I guess. I said, if you have Xfinity, I firmly believe this deal is going to get done before this game against the Winnipeg Jets. Because to me, it was the only thing that made sense business-wise. CHSN, if they don't sign that contract with Comcast, they are literally burning money. They are not streaming their first game to most of Chicago. Comcast, the biggest provider in Chicago, they're not streaming it to all those people. I thought there was no way that was going to happen. They absolutely, especially with the writing on the wall that happened with Marquee, right? That came down to the final day, and the deal wound up being announced before the first game. Well, that's not what happened here with CHSN. And the most frustrating part about it, as I kind of talked about on yesterday's show, is it's not like CHSN is being asked anything ridiculous reportedly from Comcast. No, what is being reported is that CHSN does not want to sign the deal, does not want to pay the rate that every regional sports network has to pay Comcast to put their stuff on their network. CHSN just doesn't want to pay it, despite having zero leverage, despite not getting the grasp that you need Comcast a lot more than Comcast needs you, especially with this YouTube TV blunder that's gone down, which, maybe CHSN isn't to blame there because YouTube TV is the one who doesn't want deals with regional sports networks. However, you only had until ever to plan this, until ever, right? If this was a business plan of yours, it really seems like you just kind of wung it, CHSN. I don't understand who are the people in charge of these decisions. What is going on here? You're literally burning money and you're basically flipping the bird to Blackhawks fans everywhere. People who, through thick and thin, through misery these last few years, you're not allowing them to watch the team that they want to watch and that they've supported for years and years and years. It is so shameful. It is so disrespectful. And it's pure greed because CHSN just doesn't want to pay what Comcast makes everyone else pay. Shame on you, CHSN. And listen, I know I'm not the biggest Blackhawks show out there, right? I'm not ignorant, but I know my stuff does get out there to some people. And I've had, multiple guests of NBC Sports Chicago in the past come on the show, multiple Blackhawks beat writers, broadcasters, right? Charlie Romeliotis. I'm not going to kiss ass. I never do. This is a nightmare and an absolute disaster, and it's shameful from CHSN. And it couldn't be more clear now by not getting a deal done before the first game that they don't care about us. They don't care about us Blackhawks fans. And it's pathetic. And it's sad that this is what it had to come to because it didn't need to be this way. It didn't need to be this way. And the Blackhawks, they didn't need to be tied together with the Bulls and White Sox. They didn't need to be with the Reinsdorfs. This all could have been avoided with just better planning and basic business handling. Like, what is going on here? You are offering people in the year 2024 for this first game last night. You offered them DirecTV or an antenna? And I know there are some people in the comments section that have said, the antenna isn't the worst thing in the world. That's not the point. It's the year 2024. You would think it's 1984. We're buying antennas. And also, from what I've seen in terms of antenna reviews, it's very hit or miss. So what are we doing here? And I know there are some plans with Hulu and some plans about a standalone app. How do you not have this ready for your first game, for your debut, for your inaugural event? It is like some of the worst business planning and handling I've ever seen. It is an absolute nightmare, and frankly, it's offensive to us Blackhawks fans that this is going down and that CHSN still doesn't have a deal. And to see CHSN get absolutely lit up whenever they posted anything last night, it was awesome because it's what they deserve because they're making boneheaded decisions. And I'm sorry that, Rick Ball, Darren Pang, and even like the Blackhawks front office, right? Like they're not at the table in these discussions. It's, not the Blackhawks' fault, but at the same point in time, they could have went and did their own thing. They could have went and did what the Chicago Cubs did and branched out and created their own thing to be in control of these decisions. But now, staying together with the White Sox and Bulls as a corporate CHSN's business execs are the ones that are pulling the strings and making all these decisions. And guess what? They don't care about the Blackhawks or their fans. All they care about is money. And it's absolutely pathetic, man. It's absolutely pathetic. Shame on you, CHSN. I'm not kissing butts. This is pathetic, and us Blackhawks fans deserve better. Shame on you. You're going to lose a lot of people this way. You've already lost a lot of people this way, and to read the comment sections, keep it up, Blackhawks fans, because we deserve better. We are some of the best, if not the best fans in all of the National Hockey League, and this is the way that we get treated as an Original Six franchise. One of the biggest franchises in all of professional sports, right? The most iconic logo. Like, it's absolutely pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic. I cannot believe there is still not a deal done, and I do expect they're going to get something done eventually here, but like, if they're willing to not get a deal done for the first game, they clearly don't care. And that makes you wonder how long these discussions are going to last for. Regardless, though, it's an absolute shame that this is happening. It's a shame that in the year 2024, we're offered DirecTV or an antenna to watch Blackhawks games. What have we come to? Aye. Let me know your thoughts about this down in the comment section below, Blackhawks fans. I'm sure we're all feeling the same way. Is it's an absolute scam going on by CHSN right now, and I couldn't be more disappointed, and it couldn't be more of a pathetic look from CHSN. So that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. I know I got a little rambly there at the end, but last night really struck a nerve with me because, as I said, so many people texted me, and I told all of them, if you have Xfinity, you're probably going to be fine by the season opener. Don't go buy an antenna, because it would just be so dumb for CHSN to not have a deal done by this opening game. What do you know? They don't. Greed. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at Jack Bushman too, but be sure to check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates until the next episode, which is Mailbag Monday. Be sure to reach out with your Blackhawks related question. Hopefully the Hawks can pull off a miracle and get the job done in Edmonton here tonight to not get off to that 0-3 start that I kind of foreshadowed. Until then, everyone, have a great rest of your weekend. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.